knows. So let's just pretend there's no real world. And Dolores just found out that Marge is capable of a lie. Can you imagine that? The Sarge. You guys met my friend Margaret. Can you imagine Dolores realizing that the Sarge is actually capable of a lie? Shocking. We have so many shocking things we're learning this season on RHONJ. Now, we learned that Teresa's vocabulary is not big. I think she told us that. And we now have learned that Marge, the Sarge, tells a lie every now and again. So, but Marge is very upset. And she says she was almost crying, poor Marge. She almost cried when Dolores came at her. She almost had a breakdown. But in true Jersey fashion, they hug it out and they move on. What can I tell you? So, Melissa, we're dealing with Melissa. We have this scene between Melissa and Joe, and Melissa basically is checking in with Joe and saying, like, this is exactly, I mean, Dolores is called the Last Supper, of course, and Melissa says to Joe, this is how I'm going to handle this situation with your sister. Like, basically, like, I mean, we haven't spoken all season, but like, she's dead to us, she's dead to me. And do I have your permission? I mean, you got to respect Melissa for that. Like, basically saying, like, do I have your permission? These two are always on the same page. He says that's exactly how I would handle it. He's wearing the watch. I mean, guys, this really did feel like a series finale, or at least we're leaving it so that whoever doesn't come back, we have seen their story through. And then we have, we have Melissa saying that, um, everybody has come out of the woodworks and warned her and Margaret and everyone who was not on Teresa's side about Louie. She tells the story that she was, can you imagine being at a restaurant just like off air down the shore and just minding your own business and someone comes up and says, I'm sorry to bother you. Like I'm Louie's actual niece and like it's actually me and I just want to tell you like beware. I mean, man, this shit runs deep. I still say when there's smoke, there's fire. And I don't think, it's a jilted ex. I think if everybody, multiple exes, family members, I really do believe in the Sutton Strack, where there's smoke, there's fire. If everyone is like warning you about Louis, I think there has to be something there. Yes, I think people exaggerate, but there's got to be something. So that's what we learned from Melissa that, the niece came up off air and, Danielle, because it's Melissa and Fuda, and Danielle have a meeting at Fuda's house. And Danielle says that Teresa seems to be 98 pounds. Rachel alerts us to the fact that she's not 98 pounds because of stress. She's 98 pounds because of Ozempic. Melissa laughs. And Melissa is very, very entertained to this episode. Melissa and Danielle, they just get entertained very easily. And it's like Melissa has accepted her fate and she just is laughing now and is lighthearted, which I actually appreciate. It wouldn't shock me if the Gorgas got a spinoff. I wouldn't shock me. But again, we have a whole theory on the future of RHONJ. We're not there yet. But Danielle says that Teresa is a shell of herself and that the house is not calm and there's a lot of tension in the house. And I agree. And it's so sad when Melissa's old nose just said this on my podcast, knowing Teresa, not as good as Melissa knows her, or Joe, but that scene where Joe Gorga says, even if all this were true, my sister's old school Italian and she would never admit it. It's like, I believe Melissa's old nose. I believe Joe Gorga. It's like, but man, Teresa, girl, if you're not happy, like, it's okay. Like, why can't you just be wrong? I mean, I was wrong about Melissa Gorga coming back. She came back. So I would just like, I get it. The whole world is watching and you're going to prove everyone right. It's like, I don't even think Teresa cares about the whole world. I think she cares about Melissa and Margaret. That's the sick part about this, that she is old school Italian. And just to prove Melissa and Margaret wrong, she's going to stay with Louis. I mean, I know she's happy. That's great. I hope it works out. I hope they end up together for 100,000 years. But if you're not happy, get out. It's okay. Your happiness, who cares what people think? Who the fuck cares? It doesn't get you anywhere to care. When you don't care, life is freeing. I can't go down this road and preach this. because I'm a broken record. But I do believe Joe Gorga when he says that she would admit she was wrong, which is so sad. Danielle and Nate, they have a name for her father, and it's Sam, and Sam and her he responds and he's proud of her, and they're carving pumpkins. Okay. And the kids don't know that he's Sam. The Last Supper is approaching. Paulie and Dolores are home, and Paulie says, I don't know what you wear. What do you wear to a UFC fight? And Dolores laughs. She's very intrigued with Paulie. Everyone's saying, let's see which of these men stay when the show is over. I don't know if they would necessarily leave. I mean, you're still in the public eye per se. Right, Dolores decides that whoever has a problem with each other sit right across from each other. She's smart enough not to sit Margaret and, does not sit Melissa and Teresa across from each other, but she sits her across from Marge. But we're not there yet. Now we have a scene that Melissa's old news has discussed on this podcast last week. Before this episode aired last Sunday, she said there's going to be a scene in the bedroom. There was a scene in the bedroom where Luis says to, first, he says to Teresa, how are you going to handle tonight when you see Margaret? Teresa reveals, and this one is a major, major bit of information. I cannot believe we have learned this. It is shocking, possibly the biggest reveal of the entire season. Teresa reveals to Louie she is not a very strategic person. Hashtag duh. Hashtag DUH. Shocker. We have learned that Teresa Giudice is not a strategic person. Louis even says, of course not. We all know that. He. Well, this is just what Gabriella said would happen. Because now we get into it where Louis says, I hope Margaret suffers. I hope her whole family suffers. I hope Margaret's son suffers. She's a disgusting, vile human being. He said she's a piece of garbage. Now, this is what Melissa's old nose said would happen. And Melissa's old nose, now we are recording this episode, which you're listening to this Saturday. We are recording this on Monday the 5th, the day after the reunion. But Melissa's old nose has also said on my podcast last week that Louis is very upset, and Teresa is very upset about this scene. Now, she reveals, and if you didn't listen last Sunday, go back and listen. She reveals that Teresa called her because they were working together after this scene and said, she was so upset. She said Teresa called her at 2 a.m. She was outside chain smoking cigarettes, and that they were very upset because they realized that he said piece of garbage and son suffers, and they begged Sarah Page over there, that little PR bitch. I called little bitch boy for whatever his name is, little Tommy Ierna.